the
This
session.
conference will now be recorded.
All right. So, any questions, guys, before we move forward? Anyone? Any questions out here? Will Azure charge
Yes.
for access? Uh, uh, just a second. I'll just take a question in the chat window. I'll just come back to you in a second. Will Azure charge for access tier for replicated data stored in the secondary location? No. Azure will charge you whenever you change your access tier from, let's say, LRS to GRS, and that's the entire charge that they, let's say, charge you for even the second tier, the first tier, and all that stuff, or also copying the data and etc. Yes, Vinod, you can go ahead now, please.
Kiran, why there are two keys in the access key option?
Good question. Why there are two keys in the access keys option? I'll talk about that in a second. Just give me a second. I'll just take a couple of questions more and then move forward with that.
Okay.
Yes. Any more questions here?
Kiran?
Go ahead, Satish.
Yes. By
Yes,
going
Satish,
into the
you're audible.
containers,
Go ahead, please.
yes, by going to the containers, and there is two options. One is shared access, share tokens,
Correct.
and another one is access tokens,
You mean
access
in the
policy.
contain
Sorry, access policy.
access policies? Okay. So let me go there
Yeah. Could
and
you please explain
mhm,
that?
definitely access policies. Definitely, I'll also explain this one. And this is one of the most important concepts. I'll also take this one out here. So, two, two questions out here. One is that why do we have two keys out here? Second is the access policies. I'll address one after the other. So, very importantly, if I go into a storage account service, I have two different keys out here. So, if I say show, I have two different keys out here. The question here is that, why do we have two different keys? One key is sufficient, is it? Same thing, same way. I'll just put the scenario in a different way. You have a house and you have a key out here, right? If you lose that key, you need some kind of a spare key out here. Same concept applies to your, let's say, storage accounts as well. Meaning, just putting the scenario once again, is that I have a storage account out here and I am giving access keys to a lot of developers out here. And what I did is that I shared the key one to all my developers. I've given the key one to all my developers out here. Everyone is using the key one. And all of a sudden, one of the developers left the organization and I decide to rotate. Now, not only the developers who are using my key, there is also an application, a front end application out here called ICICI, who is looking into the data of this particular storage account via the same access key what my developer is using. Now, what really happens out here is that when I rotate my key, if I do a key rotation, all these developers they lose the access, which I'm okay with. One developer left the organization, everyone lose their access, which I'm okay with. I can take some time, give all the access keys to this particular developer. I can take the new access key, give all these access keys to the developer and etc. And they can start working, which is a downtime, but I'm okay to afford that. But the issue here is not with the developer, but with the application. As and when I rotate the key out here, the application might be using the same key and the application will incur a downtime, meaning you as a user, you are trying to do some kind of a transaction or you're trying to, let's say, look at your statements, and ICICI all of a sudden gives you something like 404 error telling that you're unauthorized to download this out, or we are facing some issues in downloading this out and etc. This will cause an impact to your business. It's a business impact, and this is something that we would, let's say, just a second guys, can you please go on mute? I'm hearing a lot of echo. Ram, do you have a question for me? Please stay on mute, guys. If you're not asking question, please stay on mute. It will disturb the session out here. So the application which is using the same key will now start throwing me an error telling me that, you know what, you're not authorized to look into that particular storage account because the key is rotated and I don't have the right key out here. Reason being, what we normally do is that firstly, if I want to rotate a key, I will first take the key to share it with all my developers and also share it under the application. I'll change the key of the application, key to give a quick restart to my application. Will take around 2 seconds, 3 seconds for the application to get restarted, and this application and the developers can start continue working. Then what I can do is I can come here, rotate the primary key so that the developers and all these guys who are using this particular keys this particular keys will lose the access. Whoever is unauthorized will lose the access. Then I come here, give a new key to my users and also my applications, and also rotate my key. So this is now an incremental rotation so that you can avoid the downtime and also the loss in the business. Reason being, you will have two different keys out here. One acts as a primary, the other acts as a secondary. Both of them have the same level of permission, same level of access. It's just like it's your main key and this is a spare key out here that you can use in cases where you want to avoid application downtimes out here. Yes, any I think does that answer your question? And
Kiran, if you only rotate key one, then I think there is no requirement to rotate key two.
again, that let's say you don't know which key you shared with that particular developer who left the organization. I'm not sure whether you gave key 1 or key 2. For my own
Okay.
security, I am rotating both the keys out here because I, as a user, or I, as an organization, I don't want to leave things for a chance.
Okay.
So
But
that's the
if in
reason.
a case,
Hmm? Mhm.
in a case you are giving key two to like customer and key one to the developer, and if you
Mhm.
rotate only key one, can the company access key two?
Yeah, definitely. They can access key 2. So that shouldn't be an issue out there. Yes. Any more questions here? Anyone? Any more questions till
So
here?
in real time also they are going to rotate the keys, right? We are going to rotate the
Correct.
keys.
Correct. So
There
we
won't be
do have
no
a
space.
policy. Yes. So we do have a policy out here telling that for every 30 or 90 days you have to rotate your keys out there. Like, you have
Okay.
a security team, you have a lot of teams out here which will monitor all these things very closely. And they give a mandate telling that, you have to rotate your keys for enhanced security of your organization and all these things.
So to avoid the downtime, by the time users will not access the right. So to avoid that, you said like we have some concept which we are going to what cover in a networking concept, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
The purpose of rotating the key is to make sure that the key that you have already shared with a developer who left the organization and you want to invalidate that particular key. If you want to invalidate, if you want to make that key invalid, that's where you go ahead and rotate a particular key as such. So key as in when you rotate it, meaning you as a DevOps engineer, you accidentally shared this key with someone. The organization wants to rotate this out, and once you rotate it, people who have the older key will lose the access. That's the idea of doing a key rotation as such.
Kiran, why can't we do like this? Let's say, for example, I'm left from my organization.
Mhm,
So while I'm leaving from my organization, right?
mhm,
Can't we close directly my account? I mean to say, like, if I have to access this and all, right? We have to
mhm.
log in and then we have to access. So in a
Not.
higher level,
Mhm.
okay.
So again,
In,
yes, that's right. So when you leave the organization, yes, I will go ahead and I will remove you from my tenant. If I say Azure Active Directory out here,
tenant.
like, I go to Azure Active Directory, I remove you from my tenant. So if I come here
Okay.
and you're a user called something like demo user, I'll just come here and say, you know what, this guy left the organization, so I'll remove this out. You're removed.
Okay.
But if you have the key, to my storage account, the catch out here is that you don't have to really sign in. You can just directly use this key. When I was using a key, I just use a storage explorer out here, and all I do is go into that particular storage explorer. Even without signing in, I can simply go ahead, use your key, and get access to your storage account service. I don't have a control on how you're accessing it. There are multiple ways to get into your storage account. You can either sign in, or you can just go ahead, use a key out here. So in this case, you have a key, you'll just go ahead, give the key out here, and get access to my storage account. So even though you're not a part of my tenant, you'll still get access to my account, which is a security implication as such, for which I go ahead and rotate the key as such out there.
Okay. I thought like a tenant is a higher level, right? So if we are going to remove, then
Great.
storage space, resource groups, everything is going to be removed. That is what I thought. Okay, I got it.
It is, but if you have a key, it'll bypass all these things out.
Okay.
To avoid downtime of an application uses key 2 and developer uses key 1. We then rotate key 1. Is it possible? Definitely yes. But again, you cannot control on what I am sharing with someone. Like I, as a DevOps engineer, let's say I accidentally shared key 2 to or key 1 to my, let's say, developers out there that my application is using. I'm a new developer. I'm a new DevOps engineer in the team. I don't know whether to share the key 1 or key 2. I end up sharing both of them. That will again cause a security implication on this. So we always suggest to go ahead and rotate both the primary and the secondary key while you're doing a key rotation, to ensure that you have maximum, let's say, security for your organization, and you're not leaking all these things out there in, let's say, to the open internet as such. Yes, any more questions here with the key
Okay.
rotation while doing? Yeah, good, please.
Yeah, I added a user under the developer
Mm-hmm.
in the resource group level instead of subscription level,
Okay,
but still that subscription is reflecting in that user. How come it's possible?
just a second. So you added a user on the subscription, and so
No,
you
no,
added a
no.
user on the resource group,
Yeah, exactly. But
and
while after logging into the user account, still the subscription is reflecting under subscription tab as
definitely it
a
has to
resource level, access at the
yes,
resource level. How come
definitely
it's
it
possible?
has to reflect. Reason being, whatever granular access you give, let's say I go ahead and I gave a access to the user just at the resource group level, he will still get a read access to your subscription, because resource groups fall under a subscription. Now the idea to go ahead and give a user access to a resource group is that he can log into your subscription, but he cannot change anything in your subscription because he doesn't have any access practically in there, and he only has access to one particular resource group of your subscription out here as such. So the
Yeah, yeah.
user will still be able to see the subscription. If he's not able to see the subscription, right, he won't even be able to see the resource group. So you
Okay.
need to have a limited access to the subscription to get an access to the RG out there under it. So parent child relationship as such.
Even though we are not giving as adding the user at subscription level, still we can able to see that subscription under after
Correct.
logging
You
in
should
getting.
be able to see it exactly, because if you don't see the subscription, then forget about the child resources in the first place. You won't even be able to see the child resources as such.
But scope it's showing as resource level.
Correct. Scope will show at resource level because you have assigned an access at the resource group level, and you as a user will not be able to make big changes on the subscription as such.
Okay.
Yes, any more questions here? Okay, moving to the next concept. Now, this concept was about, let's say, the key rotations. Why do you rotate the key? Why is key one, key two, and etc.? Why do you have those spare keys and etc. and all these things out here? Now, I'll just come down to yesterday's class. Now, yesterday, I went ahead and I said that, you know what, you can add something called as lifecycle management policies. And if you look at this, lifecycle management policies can also be called as deletion policies out here. Because usually what they do is that they change the tier from hot to cool, cool to archive, and finally you want to delete it after a period like 1 year or so, and you want to apply something known as deletion. So it will manage the life cycle, and eventually the goal of the life cycle management is to go ahead and delete the blobs that are obsolete, that are no longer needed. This is what you want to do using a life cycle management policy. But let's say you have a container inside that particular storage account and called important container. Now, let's say for your legal and auditing compliance, like, you know, every firm has to, let's say, comply with auditing policies and a lot of things out here. Let's say for these purposes, you want to retain the data. I'm talking about retention. Retain the data for a longer period of time. And you want to avoid accidental deletions. You don't want to go ahead and, let's say, fall into a mess wherein someone deletes it out and 7 days period is done. You cannot even restore that blob and all that stuff. You want to retain this data. Like law firms and all these things, right? See, they want to hold the cases for a longer period of time. They don't want to just delete the cases out there because it can be reopened at any time and you have to, let's say, revisit it and all that stuff in the form of blobs. So what we do is that we imply or we apply something called as an access policy. And the access policy out here is to retain the data for n number of days. N number of days out here next term. So what I do is that I can go here and I'll say access policy. Okay, let's see, I'll refresh the screen. For some reason it got disconnected, and let me give it a second. Guys, you still able to hear me? I thought there was an issue with my internet. Are you all able to hear me? Can anyone please
Yes,
confirm?
yes, Kiran, yes, Kiran, we can.
Great.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yes. Okay, some issue with
Clear.
the Azure portal search. Okay, fine. I'll go into the access policy out here, and I have something called as an immutable blob storage. Immutable meaning you cannot kill it. Immutable just means that you cannot really kill it or you cannot really destroy it. And what I'll do is that I'll add something called as the access policy out here. And there are multiple types of access policies. And one thing that I'm really interested into is something called time-based retention. I'll say I want to retain my data for a period of 365 days. And I'll say save this out. Now, when you apply a time-based or a legal hold, both work in the same way. Legal hold just doesn't give you a time, meaning legal hold just locks it out until you delete things out there. Time-based can give you a period where you can retain your data, meaning for the next 365 days, all the data in this particular container cannot be deleted. It should not be deleted out here is what I'm now telling Microsoft Azure. Meaning, if I go into immutable policy, this is what I was talking about. When you apply an immutable policy, the blobs are in something known as a warm state, WORM. Write once, read many. Meaning if you upload the data, you cannot change the data again. You cannot even change this particular data out here. The data is there like for that period of time that you apply this particular policy out there. You cannot rewrite, you cannot delete your storage and all these things. And if you want to delete the storage, if I come here and if I come back here, if I want to delete this particular container, so let me go back into the home page. Let me come from here. And if I want to delete this particular container, I say, you know what, I want to delete this out. Now it's successfully deleted. Reason being, there was no data in it, and that's the reason I was able to go ahead and delete this out. But if I apply this particular, let's say, policy out here on a container which has data, so I go ahead and add an immutable policy out here. I'll say time-based retention. I'll just give 1 day out here and say save this out. And if I change this now, if you look at this, the state of the policy is unlocked. Now please hear me out. If you click on this and say lock policy, don't do it at all. Please don't do this, because once you lock this out, you cannot unlock this at all. You cannot unlock this at all. You have to, let's say, live with this. So if you do a lock out here, the state of the policy will change into something called as locked. And once it is locked, even if you go ahead and request Microsoft, they won't unlock it out. No matter what happens, they won't unlock this out. It will be in a lock state. And if it is in a lock state, you cannot just come here and delete your containers out here as such. So let me try this out. Fail to delete. Again, it's in an unlock state, fail to delete. Why is it so? Because you have the data in this one. You cannot delete your container, neither you can delete your storage account out here. So if I come here, delete my storage account, it will try deleting it out. But since I have a container that is there in immutable state, it will again say, now it's saying successfully the storage account. Reason being, the container was in an unlocked state. The container here is in an unlocked state out there. So if your container is in locked state, you will still get the same error what you had in that particular container as such. Due to immutable policy, you literally cannot go ahead and delete something out there. So immutability out there is for a reason that you can retain your data for a particular period of time, whichever period that you give, 720, 365, anytime you give, and you lock your policy out. Very importantly, you lock your policy out, then that's where your storage account nor the containers can be deleted. In an unlocked state, if you have a data, you cannot go ahead and delete your container, but you can delete your entire storage out there if it is in an unlocked state. But the recommendation out here is that you have to lock your storage account if you want to retain your data. Once you lock that particular policy, very importantly, you cannot unlock it, guys. So please don't lock it out. You cannot really unlock it once again. So please don't lock it. But for the conceptual clarity, if you lock things out, or if you lock that particular policy out there, you cannot delete your storage, you cannot delete your container until that time period is done. You cannot even go ahead and update your data. This is in a warm state out here as such. So write once, read many state out here. And that's the use case of something called as access policy, which acts as a retention period on your blob data as such out there. Yes, any questions till here? Anyone, any questions till here that I can take?
We can lock storage account.
You
Can
can
we
lock
lock?
storage account, but as in you cannot apply that particular retention policy directly on the storage account. You can only apply those retention policies on the individual containers. And if you apply the retention policy on an individual container, lock that particular container out or lock that particular policy out, your storage account internally is locked. So that's how we apply locks on top of a storage account as such.
This access policy is cost associated.
No, it is not. But if you lock your, let's say, storage account out, you are paying, for the cost for storing the data, for accessing the data and all these things. But to apply the access policy, there is no cost associated.
Thank you.
Yes. Satish, does that answer your question on what access policies really are? And any more questions out there?
Kiran, it will be logged for entire period, not the period we are giving. You told we can give a period of certain time, right? It will be
Correct.
logged for certain period, or it will be locked permanently.
So the lock is permanent. You can delete your blobs after that period of time. Let's say I went ahead and I uploaded the data today and I put a lock for 1 day. You can delete my blobs tomorrow if that 1 day period is done, and then you can delete the container. But if you keep adding data there, right, all the story on all the blobs will start taking that particular policy, and the lock will become permanent. Meaning, though your date is getting expired, you can delete individual blobs, but not the container as such. So it kind of applies on a permanent basis on the storage account, sorry, on the container level, but for a time base on the blob level as such.
So in such case, like if there is no data after time period, so we can delete the
Correct.
storage level, like blob level,
Correct. You can delete the blob
container
level, and
also.
you can, yes, that's correct. Yes. Any more questions?
Kiran, either I
Mhm.
feel that storage access policies add a policy on top
Mhm.
of that option.
Correct.
Identifier, give permissions, and I
Mhm.
have been given read and write. The time that is asking, what is this one?
Okay.
Add a policy of
No,
that
just a second.
identifier.
No, just a second. Let me create another storage account out here because I deleted that one. So I'll have to, let's say, go and create a new one out here. So which one are you really talking about? Let's say I put this in something like LRS, and I'll just go and create this out real quick, and I'll also go and create a container out there, and we'll also see what is, let's say, the point where you have a question out there as such. Yes, I'll take that, but while the storage account is getting created,
Is in
any more?
access policies, storage
in
access policies. In access
in
policies, there
storage?
is a storage
Okay.
access policy on the top of the option of immuted blob storage.
Okay. No, that is stored access policy you're talking about. It's not storage access policy. It's a stored access policy that you're talking about out there.
Yes,
Is
yes,
that it's a stored access
yes.
policy?
Stored.
Yes. I'll come down to stored access policy, but let me park that question for now because stored access policy needs to be covered with another topic. So I'll take the stored access policy there, so that will make much more sense as such.
Okay, Kiran. Thank you.
Yes. Any more questions here?